All right, so let's just go ahead and get into it. First thing up for this evening, we're going to start with our main topic. We're going to talk about the first two episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus. The way that we do this is we actually start off with sort of a spoiler-free discussion, talking about our initial reactions, but we want to hear from you. Those of you hopefully watching or listening, we want to know what you think. So please comment on whatever platform you're on. Tell us what you thought about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We desperately want to hear your thoughts. Normally we run a contest. We're not going to be running that tonight, but the contest will return actually next week because I'm running behind on getting stuff in the mail and I'm getting everything's kind of getting backed up, kind of like PSA. But we'll talk more about PSA a little bit later this evening.
Good tease there. Good tease.
Yeah. So, all right. So to start off with, we're going to talk about, again, the first two episodes. The first one is New World Order. It says Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes realize their futures will be anything but normal. So we'll just go ahead and start off with the first episode here real quick. Initial impressions, I enjoyed this episode. I quite liked it, and I was surprised with some of the choices that they made. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, but I still really enjoyed it. So I quite liked the first episode. What did you think of the first episode, Eric?
Well, I want to acknowledge Jane is in the house. She said, hey, guys. So I want to say hi. Always glad to see you talking out there in the Rose Gallery and being our first commenter. Hopefully we'll get some more comments. Because as Dave said, I would really love to hear what other people have to say about this show as well. So the first episode, New World Order, I felt it was really slow. It starts off with a very good, a pretty good action sequence, but the rest of the episode I felt was kind of slow, and that is kind of my overall impression. Even with the first two episodes, is I feel like I feel one of the problems with these Marvel shows, these Marvel series, now that we have something to compare it to, since we've seen the full the full run of WandaVision and what they decided to do and where that actually went, whether you liked it or not. There is something to be said about the approach and about doing a series versus a film, right? So in a film, typically, right, you're looking at about 2 hours and you got to tell a story, hopefully with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that sounds like, that sounds so like what are you talking about? That has to have a beginning, a middle, and end. A lot of movies don't. A lot of movies get stuck in one of the acts, either the first or the second act, and the third act ends up being a complete mess because they have to resolve all these things that they established very badly in the first two acts, or sometimes very well, and they just don't deliver at the end of it. But what's nice about films is because of their limited amount of time, they tend, this isn't always the case, we all know films that sort of tend to feel like they're way too long, and maybe some more scenes could have been cut out because you're like, why is this taking so long for the good stuff to actually happen? In a series, you have a lot more time. So, basically we're already at a feature length with the first two episodes. But the first episode in particular, I felt like there was a lot of stuff that they were putting in there that I felt was like kind of unnecessary, where I was just kind of like, okay, who really cares? There's always a possibility that they're setting up something, right? That they're setting up something and that's going to, be a big payoff later. But that's what I kept thinking about WandaVision. And at the end of the day, I was disappointed in the payoff. I didn't feel that the payoff was there. So I'm concerned, right? Because of my experience as someone who wasn't like a huge fan of WandaVision, not saying I hated it, but I definitely was disappointed at where WandaVision ended up, in particular, very much so with the finale, with the last episode. I thought that there were some things that were being set up that just never happened, and they were pretty obvious things to set up. And in fact, it's actually been shown that a lot of stuff with WandaVision got cut out, and they ended up not doing it because of budgetary reasons or because of the pandemic or all sorts of different things that contributed to that. I think even the directors have talked about that certain things were supposed to happen that just didn't. So I get concerned about when there's these kind of long languishing scenes and stuff is going on, and I was getting a little bored. That's pretty much the bottom line. I think the first episode, in particular, New World Order, it starts out fairly strong, because I think a show like this, what you want, I would think what you want as a fan is lots of action. Falcon and the Winter Soldier are characters that are made for that. So you kind of anticipate that that's the kind of film that you're going to get. And when they spend hours, well, not hours, but they spend a lot of time just talking or just not really doing anything, that's kind of disappointing to me.
Okay. Let's go ahead. We'll do the summary here real quick for the second episode. The summary for the second episode is a little spoilery, but I think everyone's seen this, so it's not a huge shock. But the title of the second episode is The Star-Spangled Man, and the summary basically reads that John Walker is named Captain America, and Sam and Bucky team up against a rebel group. So that's your summary. So I'm going to be honest with you. I really, really like this episode. I know a lot of people are hating on John Walker at the moment, the new Captain America. I've talked before about how I'm a huge fan of U.S. Agent. If you read the comics, John Walker eventually becomes a character in the comics anyway called U.S. Agent, and is kind of like a different version of Captain America, and continues to operate. And he kind of often represents the United States government, kind of a government-sponsored superhero, if you will, kind of like what he's the role. Well, that's getting spoilery. Anyhow, so I really liked this episode because I really liked John Walker, and I thought it was interesting because the actor that they cast to play him, I think his name is Wyatt Russell, is actually Kurt Russell's son. And there were some scenes where when he's talking and stuff and whatever, it was interesting. It was almost felt like, I could hear Kurt Russell's voice. And I was like, it's almost like they got Kurt Russell to play U.S. Agent. So I really like this episode, Star-Spangled Man, a lot. I had a lot of fun with it. And I really like what they're doing because they're taking on some different things and they're handling it in a unique manner. It's not heavy-handed. Some of the themes that they're playing with, the way that they're addressing them, I thought it was kind of interesting because it wasn't kind of hitting things on the nose. We get into spoilers. I get a little bit further into what I mean by that. But I really like this episode. So what did you think about the second episode, Erica, The Star-Spangled Man?
Well, kind of dovetailing off of my previous criticism of the first episode, one thing I did like was I felt like there was a lot more action in the Star-Spangled Man than New World Order. And that's why I'm coming to this. That's what I'm looking for. Unlike you, Dave, my knowledge of U.S. Agent comes from what you've told me. And basically looking at the Wikipedia article after you made me aware of who this person was. I had no idea who that character was before we started talking about it on the show. That's just not a character that was ever on my radar. When it comes right down to it, if a character has never appeared or has appeared in only a few of the animated shows or something like that, has never appeared in the movies, I probably don't know who they are. So I don't have any emotional attachment to that character whatsoever. I do, have some more emotional attachment to Falcon and the Winter Soldier based on the previous films that I've seen and enjoyed. But those characters, as far as like growing up or anything like that, again, very little emotional attachment or anything like that because they just weren't on my radar that much as I was growing up. But I did appreciate the fact that there was more action sequences in the Star-Spangled Man. One thing I didn't like is I do feel like Marvel has a tendency, the MCU, and of course the shows, are in the MCU continuity, even though they're not theatrical releases, right? MCU specifically can be kind of goofy. There's no doubt about that. I've mentioned that before on previous reviews of things. In fact, I think he was even talking about that when we were talking about Justice League and sort of the contrast there with like the darker Snyderverse and what the MCU generally tries to do. And they have those moments in Falcon and the Winter Soldier where they have this sort of goofy, offbeat kind of humor and dialogue even where it gets a little bit cheesy. And the MCU is kind of known for that. But at the same time, they're obviously putting things in this that are very topical and very contemporary and sort of pull me out of the world a little bit because I'm not coming to Falcon and the Winter Soldier to see stuff about what's going on in the real world and what they think about it. To be honest with you, I don't really care what they think about it as far as the people at Disney and Marvel Studios. I'm here to see some good action and have a good time, and have a good, compelling story. There is a little bit of a thread in this that I am a bit intrigued about as far as what's going on there, but I'm also concerned about ultimately how Disney and how Marvel Studios in the current political climate are going to actually approach this whole storyline. So I have some concerns. It kind of puts me a little bit on the defensive, and that's not what I want with a show like this. I want some escapism. I want more about the action. I thought when we get in the spoilers, I thought the one of the action sequences was actually a lot of fun, and I think that's one thing that you and I are both going to agree on. That what particular action sequence was kind of fun, the way they did it. But there's some other stuff in there that I feel like it almost just doesn't fit. It's like they're trying to still be like that MCU lightheartedness, and then they're also trying to go with some very controversial, topical kind of stuff that's going on in the real world. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. Well, actually, I do know how I feel. I don't like it.